Ozzie hid the truth to save family. Currently, streaming platforms offer an abundance of shows from which to choose. For those who enjoy watching crime, comedy shows are available, while reality shows are available for those who enjoy watching other people's drama. However, during the 1950s and 1960s, The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet was a popular option for public entertainment. The sitcom starred the actual Nelson family and portrayed them as the quintessential American family. However, as you'll soon discover, their existence was far from ideal and was occasionally described as controversial. Law school fails, start a dance band. The series aired on ABC from 1952 to 1966 and chronicled the lives of the entertainment duo Ozzie Nelson and Harriet Nelson, as well as their sons David and Ricky. Ozzie, formerly known as Oswald George Nelson, attended Rutgers School of Law in Newark after growing up in New Jersey. He played saxophone in an ensemble and coached football to help earn extra cash as money was limited. Initially, he auditioned for the Rutgers Jazz Bandits as a vocalist and was repeatedly rejected. But instead of becoming discouraged, Ozzie organized a dance band whose success astonished even him. The dance ensemble was so popular that he eventually dropped out of school to pursue a full-time career in music. During the Great Depression, he and his ensemble kept themselves occupied by performing in hotels and ballrooms across the East Coast. Music brought them together. During this period of musical triumph, Ozzie would encounter a showgirl and fall in love with her. The Ozzie Nelson Band was enjoying the surge of their major break in the 1930s. They'd recorded a number of songs for labels included Brunswick, Vocalion, Bluebird, and Victor. Their competition over somebody else's shoulder was like a rolling stone that didn't collect moss. It kept their popularity expanding. Peggy Lou Snyder, a vaudeville actress in New York City, was one of the fascinating characters the musicians encountered during their travels. Peggy grabbed Ozzie's attention, so he invited her to join their ensemble. She considered prior to adopting the name Harriet Hilliard. The collaboration was successful, and her lovely vocals contributed to the band's growing popularity. In 1935, their song "And Then Some" even spent an entire week at the top of the U.S. music singles charts. Harriet's teenage years. On screen, Harriet matches the archetype of the ideal homemaker, exhibiting all of the characteristics of a kind and upbeat woman. However, her past was not as spotless. Harriet, born into a theatrical company, was introduced to the vaudeville stage at the vulnerable age of 3 as Peggy Lou Snyder. By the time she was an adolescent, she'd seen Broadway and enjoyed the company of a considerably mature audience. At the age of 13, she frequented the notorious Cotton Club in New York, where she smoked the occasional cigarette. Peggy dropped out of high school to join the Corps de Ballet at the Capitol Theater before performing in the Harry Carroll Revue. This spirited performer is the one with whom Ozzie fell in love. Peggy Lou's wrong crowd. By the time Peggy met Ozzie and changed her identity, she had previously been married. During her years as a performer and Cotton Club fixture, she was married to the comic Roy Sedley. The wedding took place in 1930 when Peggy was just 21 years old. The marriage didn't help her because the finest version of herself, rather it introduced her to a vicious group. After a year of being abused by her spouse, she separated from Roy in 1933, and the marriage was subsequently annulled. When she eventually met Ozzie, her life took a turn for the better. Sparks began with Ozzie and Harriet. Do you believe in instantaneous love? Unless you're one of the few fortunate enough to experience it yourself, you likely view the concept as unrealistic and filled with illusory hope. Those who knew Ozzie and Harriet, however, were convinced that they were the ideal couple. Harriet's vivacious personality perfectly complemented Ozzie's laid-back demeanor. This synergy intensified on stage, and their interactions between tracks provided amazing comic relief. This connection was as genuine offstage as it was on, and by 1935 the couple was an official item. They married 3 years after Harriet joined the band, and by the 1950s they were regarded as the quintessential American couple. But were they? The pair were icons. It wasn't long before their success on stage piqued Hollywood's interest, and they began to appear in several musicals. The likes of Sweetheart and the Campus, Strictly in the Groove, Honeymoon Lodge, and Take It Big featured them. In most performances, they appeared as a couple, but there were occasions when they appeared separately, establishing their distinct reputations. Once Hollywood discovered Ozzie and Harriet, they began to appear in an increasing number of radio and television programs. Richard Bernard, or Red Skelton, a comedian, hosted the variety show The Red Skelton Show. They frequently appeared on this program. Ozzie Nelson developed and produced The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet as a result of this program. However, the couple had to jump through a few hoops before their own program became a success. The Red Skelton Show. Prior to the monumental triumph of The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet, we must acknowledge the contribution of The Red Skelton Show. Red Skelton, a renowned comedian, hosted this well-known variety show, which American households could listen to and watch on radio and television. As frequent visitors on The Red Skelton Show, Ozzie and Harriet's singing and music became well-known. The exposure to the inner workings of a program and what it takes to appear on the color screen provided them with the inspiration, knowledge, and direction to start their own radio show. Having children. The majority of people must carefully consider the effects of having children on their careers before deciding to procreate. But having children would elevate Ozzie and Harriet's popularity. Within a year of their wedding, the couple gave birth to their first child, a male named David. Ozzie was determined to maintain a solid family foundation despite the challenges of being a young father, and the couple merged their careers. By 1940, after the birth of their second son, Ricky, the couple was officially known as America's favorite young couple. The couple, who had experience in the film industry, resolved to introduce their children to the theater when they were ready. But what would follow on the screen was very distinct from real life. Kids on television. It's difficult to envision The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet existing without David and Ricky, but that didn't preclude the narrative from depicting the ideal American family with two sons. Before their sons became iconic characters, Ozzie cast two other boys to portray them. The program was broadcast on the radio for 5 years before it was broadcast on television. On the radio, the voices of two teenage actors not related to the family can be heard. During this period, Ozzie was preparing his two sons for a career in television. Bing Crosby encouraged Ozzie. Ozzie was adamant that his sons should have a typical adolescence before entering the spotlight of notoriety. The lads did not play themselves until 1949, when Bing Crosby, an American vocalist and entertainer, convinced them to do so. Bing Crosby appeared on the family radio program and took along his two young sons, inspiring Ozzie to give his sons an opportunity. David and Ricky both became enormous personalities and immediate hits with the audience. They believed it was the correct choice. Was it so? Ozzie's decision made prematurely. It's no secret that Ozzie deliberated carefully before giving his sons a shot at notoriety. However, did he place them in the spotlight too quickly? Having received so much attention during one's formative years can have enduring consequences. David Halberstam wrote the following about the family's existence in his book, The 50s. For all their professional success, which was very different from the family depicted on the show, they lived with an immense amount of pressure and unresolved issues. There was an underlying belief that Ozzie had stolen and exploited the childhoods of both of his sons for commercial gain. There were even complaints that Ozzie had exposed his family's most intimate moments, thereby making their problems terribly public. The show. The success of the radio program served as inspiration for the switch to television. However, in between these achievements, Ozzie and his brother Don collaborated on the screenplay for Here Come the Nelsons. The film served as the ideal visual introduction to the Nelson family before their television program swept the nation. The film also served as an introductory episode for The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet. The plot involved a misunderstanding between the couple before bank robbers kidnapped Ricky. Although they portrayed themselves, Ozzie had cast himself as an advertising executive in a movie rather than as a band leader, which is how American audience had come to know him. The ensemble cast was quite impressive. In addition to the Nelson family members playing themselves, they also had other well-known actors from the era, including Rock Hudson, Barbara Lawrence, and Jim Backus. Ozzie is a digital nomad. Here Come the Nelsons was the film released prior to the premiere of the television series. Fans had heard of the family on the radio, but this was their first time seeing them in action. Ozzie is depicted throughout the film as an advertising executive who puts food on the table by advocating for women's undergarments. However, there was no mention of his accomplishments in the television program. In truth, he rarely leaves the house unless it's for a routine ice cream run. Tracy Nelson, the daughter of Ricky Nelson, attempts to dispel the notion that her grandfather was a freeloader by stating that Ozzie's character was a Rutgers-educated attorney. It appears that work-at-home attorneys existed long before COVID-19 imposed restrictions. David Nelson's family. In 1961, while the family programming was still airing, the eldest Nelson son, David, married actress June Blair. The 25-year-old tied the knot with the lovely woman at the Church of the Hills in Forest Lawn Cemetery, with his sibling as his best man. Now that the family's actual life had taken such a dramatic turn, June joined the program as a regular cast member. Thankfully, she was already an actress. However, David's household continued to expand. In between law school and relocating into an apartment with his wife, he had a son, Daniel Blair Nelson. In 1966, with the birth of his second son, Jamie Eric Nelson, he had a family of 4. Come to an end. The run of the adventures of Ozzie and Harriet was successful. They grew their identity as a family and cemented their name over 22 years of successful broadcasting. 8 years on radio preceded 14 years on television, and by the time the program ceased in April 1966, few Americans had never heard of the Nelson family. Throughout the years, the show's records became quite impressive. It held the distinction of being the longest-running live-action American television sitcom until 2016, when It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia surpassed it. Their astounding 435 episodes made them the longest-running sitcom in television history, establishing their second record. They held this record until 2003, when The Simpsons surpassed it. Ozzie from front to back. Ozzie Nelson granted his son the benefit of the doubt and starred in the short-lived spin-off Ozzie's Girls alongside his son. He decided to step behind the camera and assume the roles of producer and director when that strategy failed. Ozzie Nelson discovered his niche here, and his domineering personality led to a number of profitable programs, many of which are still popular today. These consist of Adam 12, The DA, The Bridge Loves Bernie. Unfortunately, his poor health caught up with him, and he would never realize his true potential behind the camera. Unfortunately for the remainder of the Nelson family, Ozzie's battle with cancer was not the last. Not all was as it seemed. Do you ever question if the Kardashians are as historic as they appear? Or if they script specific responses in order to increase the appeal of their reality show? Ozzie's father character in The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet is lovable. While his wife is engaging and upbeat, Ozzie comes across as bumbling and hesitant. In actuality, however, this was far from the truth. Ozzie was a workaholic with a sizable demeanor off-screen. As the show's creator, producer, director, and editor, he demanded authority in a variety of ways. According to the New York Times, he was a dictatorial presence looming over his family. The description continues, stating that he prevented his sons from attending college and reminded them that they were required to work in television. This image is drastically different from what appears on the program. Ozzie put on the business hat. Even a blind person could recognize how Ricky's singing enhanced the performance. Now families were tuning in to witness America's ideal family as well as an aspirational singer. Ozzie assumed complete control of Ricky's performing career after observing his son's success and desiring to exert authority. Ozzie was ecstatic about Ricky's vocal success, particularly when it enhanced the family's reputation, such as when Ricky's 1958 single, Poor Little Fool, topped the Billboard charts. Ozzie began rewriting the show's script to include more of Ricky's vocals so as to maximize Ricky's abilities. By doing so, he increased the popularity of the program, particularly when Ricky sang in an episode. When he made an uncredited public appearance at a high school, his popularity as a singer was further elevated. During Blue Moon of Kentucky, Ricky was greeted by a rowdy crowd of shouting supporters. Ricky rushed to his brother. Over the years, Ricky Nelson dated a lot of women, none of whom his mother thought were particularly attractive. The family was delighted when he began courting family acquaintance Kristen Harmon in the same year as his brother's nuptials. Kristen was the daughter of football player turned actor Tom Harmon and actress Elise Knox. Within 2 years of dating, Ozzie Nelson increased the strain on the couple to get married. In April 1963, they exchanged vows, but it was not due to Ozzie's insistence. Kristen was expecting, and the couple married in a hurry. The baby was a secret guest. Ozzie buried the truth to protect his family from attack and avoid disapproval from others. Ricky and Kristen's unmarried pregnancy ran in opposition to the concept of an ideal family. So, Ozzie took command of hiding the fact that the bride was expecting a baby at the wedding. Even if they convinced people on the wedding day, the truth was revealed when Kristen gave birth to Tracy Christine Nelson just 6 months after the wedding. Ozzie dropped his argument that the infant was born prematurely and that there was no wedding cake in the oven. Desperate to maintain the family's image, he had the hospital misrepresent the baby's weight on the birth certificate and place the healthy infant in an incubator for photographs.